Order of Planning and Zoning and Building Committee. Roll call, please.
Alderman Artwoods.
Here.
Alderman Curielli.
Here.
Alderman Messina.
Here.
Alderman Sismarski. Alderman Ames. Here. Alderman Artie Woods.
Here.
And Alderman Catalina.
Catalano, thank you.
Sorry about that.
We have a quorum.
No, you're addressing.
We have a quorum. Okay, next is I need approval of the minutes of August 8th, 2024, Planning and Zoning and Building Committee meeting. Any corrections to the minutes? Yeah, none? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, a report and recommendation. The multiple text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 17, and the Sign Code, Chapter 13. And this is to continue the discussion from August the 8th of 2024. Director?
Thank you, Chairman. So, as was mentioned, we went through in detail all of the proposed text amendments at the August 8th PZB meeting, and there were 3 items that came up that the PZB committee asked for additional information on, and so we put those in the memo, and I'll quickly go through them. The first was related to the tree replacement regulations. Currently, they require prohibited and nuisance trees, trees that we don't even want in the city, to be replaced at a ratio of 1 to 1. The PZB didn't feel it was appropriate to continue to do that, and the regulations have been since revised to eliminate that requirement. The second item was related to special uses. Once they're approved, who it runs with. In state statute, it's required that it runs with the land. Most other communities do that. For some reason, this community has been tying it to an individual. So if that individual sells the property, then that existing special use goes away, and the new purchaser would have to go through the special use requirements again, even if they were using the business in the exact same way. So we're proposing to change it to the more common way. And the question came up that when a special use is tied to...
Mary, you had a question?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So, going to that, right here it says, we did confirm with the city attorney that special use would pass to the new owner of the corporation, however the proposed text amendment is approved. It sounds like it, I'm reading.
Yep.
So we still need to change the text amendment? I'm just, kind of confused me, or is that?
No, I'm sorry. There's a typo in there.
Okay.
So
right.
if this text amendment is approved, then that issue no longer would apply. It's a non-issue, because it would transfer with a corporation if we left it as an individual, but when we change it to going with the land, regardless who buys it, it would stay with the land and the new owner.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, so I know that's in state statute that's written. Throughout the United States, I mean, there's a toss-up 50-50. If you poll different communities, different states, and reasons why you would want it with the owner, I mean, it's adds you a little greater protection, a little more flexibility. And in some respects, if the special use goes with the land, aren't we just bypassing some of the zoning that's already in place, and you start to create all these little mini carve-outs with the special use? If that's so big an issue, why don't we just change what the zoning code says there and eliminate the pain of going through the process of the special use permit? That was kind of long-winded, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I followed the first part of it. Why wouldn't we want to keep it with the individual? And
before you, not to cut you off, but before you go on, so most businesses go in there as a business, and when they sell the business, they sell the business. So in those particular cases, that use would remain with the business. So only if somebody doesn't buy the business and they're selling the building, that the use is eliminated. But if there's continuity of the business, then the use stays.
No, so that's the problem. So if somebody sells the business, But, okay, so if someone sells the business and the property doesn't change hands, only the business, that doesn't come up very
No.
often, but,
Well, the property would change hands also.
okay, so if somebody buys the
If the
business and the
special use
property,
was
the special
granted to
use
the-
does not transfer.
Granted to the business, you're telling me that when they sell the business, it doesn't transfer. That doesn't make sense.
Correct.
Why would that not be? I mean.
Because we
that-
specify in our code, which is what we're trying to change, that if the entity that the special use is granted to, it's usually the business owner or the property owner, if they sell it, then the special use goes away. We don't want that any longer, because we've had issues where if somebody wants to sell a gas station or any type of use that has a special use, every drive-through, if that changes hands, that special use goes away because it's tied to the individual. We want to fix it, so that doesn't happen.
Okay, well, you're interchanging words with building owner, and I'm staying with business. Anyway, moving on to the next layer with the, I guess when we look at the special use, we're typically looking at the business that comes into town, right? And they present what it is they're doing, they give us their business plan. We look at them and go, okay, these are your requests, it seems fair for you and what your business plan is. So now you're telling me that whatever we granted to him will be granted to somebody else. So would we now start looking at those special use permits a little differently or more stringently, because it isn't just based on, it's more like a zoning variance that if I'm giving you 5 feet instead of 6, it's into perpetuity.
So, so if in one instance, let's say there was a particularly special use that we thought, we trust this owner to do it, but we don't trust somebody else to do the same thing. We can change that specific special use to run with the individual property owner, business owner. But the default would be that,
But then we would have 2 classifications of special use?
no, what we want to do is have the code say one thing. What's been happening is every time we approve a special use, if you go back and look at what's happened over the last couple of years, every single one of them, we say in the conditions that the special use will run with the land, not the business owner. Because if somebody else comes along and buys the business and the property and wants to run it the exact same way, we don't want them to have to go through another special use. So what we've been doing is we've been changing it on every single special use. What we're trying to do is make that the norm, and then if we have some sort of use that we're concerned about that somebody else might not run as well, then we can tie that one, which would be a unique and rare circumstance, to the property owner via the special use ordinance.
I don't know why I'm losing you in this, but I could have swore special use is good for only the person applying for it. Once that person's done, it's done.
Correct. That
Doesn't
is what
matter
the
if their
code says
business
now.
is the same or not, it's done after that person's done. So the next person still has to apply for a special use again.
Correct, that's the way it is now. But think about, this may hamper the sales of businesses in the city. So if I've come through and I want to buy a Burger King, that the special use was granted to Burger King, and Burger King has sold the business, and a Chick-fil-A wants to go in there, Chick-fil-A has to go through a process where they have to prepare all of the plans, all of the special use applications, all of the fees, go through an extra 4 months to get the same approval that BurgerKing had. And so we want to, it's more of a business-friendly environment.
There's a follow-up,
Follow-up.
why we call it a special use then? I mean,
It's still a special use. Special use, there's permitted uses and special uses in every zoning district. Permitted use is what we call by right. You can just go in because that use is allowed there. Certain uses, we want to make sure, based on who they're next to or the location they're in to determine, hey, is this appropriate? Maybe it's an entertainment use that will have a lot of activity. Maybe it's something that would generate noise, a music school, for example. Maybe there's outdoor activity that might be bothersome to nearby neighbors. So certain uses require a special use, and then we look at it based on whether that use is appropriate there.
Okay, continue, Director. Alderman Woods, go ahead.
So I guess, and I'm not sold yet, so I'm not arguing, I'm just trying to understand. So I would argue that all special uses, even though businesses are similar, are not the same. So does the per person afford more protection than just blanket because Mike's Coffee Shop's going in there with a drive-through versus, well, Tony's Coffee Shop. You're out of the coffee shop business now.
Espresso.
Versus some other coffee shop going in there that would operate and function completely differently and maybe a volume 10 times higher, which wasn't anticipated with a smaller, more local business. I'm trying to figure out what the scenarios would be so that you can sell me on this program.
Whatever you would like to do, I am happy to make the code that way. I'm not proposing to sell anybody, but in answer to your question, so if in order for the special use to transfer with a new business owner, they have to run it in accordance with the special use approval. So the plans, they need to be generally the same. The business operation, they can't change it. Let's say it was 50% service area and 50% retail. They can't change it to all service area, or the special use needs to be amended. So they've got to run the new business in accordance with the special use approval that was granted, all the conditions in the ordinance. And so there's built-in protections already.
Follow-up, go ahead.
And I get what you're saying, but I've sat up here for a long time and watched those things erode, and that's my only apprehension to going the other way, because the next thing is that to your 50% service, 50% storage, then they come back and go, what's the difference? It's only 55% service and 45% storage. And then they bend that while they're doing it, and then it's like, well, why pick on the guy? He's running a business, he's successful. So all I'm saying is if we're doing it with the business, then we have to be more cognizant that it's open to interpretation, some of those things, and certainly open to be run by different companies. And are we going to be the arbiters of going there and making sure that all those things are in compliance? Again, I'm not sold either way. I'm just trying to argue the pros and cons of either side as we're trying to make this decision. As you said, we had it one way, then for some reasons we had consultants come in and they changed it back this way, right? So before we flip-flop again, or change it back, I'd just like to have more conversation, which is why I'm not trying to pick on you.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
I believe that we're already doing that. So when a new business comes in and there's an existing special use, we give them a copy of the special use, we remind them what the requirements are, we get confirmation they're gonna run it that way. Should we find out they're not, then they're either required to cease or come in and get amend their special use permit. So sometimes you do see us bringing forward special use amendments. That's because somebody wants to change the way the business is run, either the original owner or a subsequent owner. That's not in accordance with the special use. So we do that as a function of our responsibilities.
Okay, one more follow-up.
Go ahead. Then, Mary, you got one?
So then we grant it to the property, the land, right? And the building, Tony's Coffee Shop, moves out and it's empty for 3 years. And coffee shop is still then an approved use for just that carve-out, which is in the same district, on the same block, but nobody else can have the coffee shop but them. So does that stay there in the... So if it's not an approved use, and whatever, we'll pick C1 zoning, right? The coffee shop in this particular scenario, right? So they got to carve out the special use on that property. And that stays there, which obviously enhances the value of the property because they have greater zoning flexibility than does the adjacent properties. Does that just stay there forever?
It does not. That's a very good question. So a special use runs with the land up to a certain number of days. And I believe it's 6 months and then it expires. It doesn't stay out there in perpetuity. I was trying to look it up really quick. But there is, in all zoning codes that I've ever come across, it runs with the land, and there's, it can't just go on indefinitely because regulations change over time.
Right. So that was part of the point I was getting to, is everything, as we change, as people change, as zoning, as
Sure.
uses, as traffic, and, you know, you look at houses, how they're used today versus how they were used 20 years, 40 years, 60 years ago. So as long as, I couldn't find that piece in our code either, which is why I was asking that. So as long as that's in there, I guess I'm okay with it.
Mary, you had a question? Thank you.
No, I was just going to say, if it runs with the business owner, the city has a little more flexibility than with the land. Because if it runs with the land, like you just said, coffee shop. But if it's just the business owner, coffee shop, the next guy's got, unless he sells the business, which the attorney here says he can sell the business, I guess he can change the name, it's still the same business, it's still,
Yeah, if someone buys like it was a corporation question, then, and the corporation stays the same, then it would transfer with the owner. The problem is, under the current circumstance, anytime the property is sold, and we see lots of business transfers, all the time, anytime, then a special use has to be sought regardless. At least when it transfers with the land, it goes with it unless it was sat vacant for 6 months or more. So it would be more favorable for someone looking for a business to buy it if they didn't have to go through a, 6-month approval process before they were allowed to, reopen.
Okay, continue.
I know I promised.
Go ahead.
She brought up something, so within that, that whole burden that we put on, isn't that precisely why we don't add that as a classification of use in a certain zoning district? So if, again, keeping the coffee shops, if coffee shops aren't allowed in C1, it's because a group of people, probably consultants and staff and council, have decided that that's not really or typically an appropriate use in C1. So a person came, put together a program, told us his business plan, or hers, theirs, what they were going to do, and we all talked through it. It went through the zoning department, went through staff, it goes through the council, and we approve it, right? Then to leave that open, you could argue that's an unfair advantage for that piece of property in and of itself, because everybody else still has to go through a special use to get it. You understand what I'm saying? So you're adding classifications to allowed uses, right? If there's 10 properties on the block, right, and they're each entitled to, by right or by law, 20 uses, right? This property now has 21 uses because we allowed them, or gave them special use to do the coffee shop, which was not allowed before, correct?
Well, all of the 10 businesses on the block have the opportunity to seek a special use. But once somebody goes through the process, then that business is configured for that use, that building. And it's more desirable for somebody to come in and purchase it rather than let it sit vacant. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Well, if the argument is that it's too burdensome for them to come and go through the special use permit for the coffee shop, everybody else has to do it, everybody has to do it.
But they already did.
Then why don't we just make coffee shops okay?
We can. Anytime the council would like to change a special use to a permitted use, we can do that.
Messina?
I guess just to drive some, the objective here is really to lower the turnover time. And I've had people come to me like realtors and be like, this is great, but I don't want to take the risk because I don't know if you guys are going to approve this special use. And so they sit and then they wonder. I mean, I come to you with multiple calls from, could have had my cigar shop in town by now, but people just are, they're just scared they may not get it. So you make that investment and you may not get the special use continued. So I see the value in this. I obviously there's some concern, but I think it's well intended.
Mayor?
Yeah, but anybody who wants to open up a cigar shop, coffee shop, whatever, before they sign the lease, they make it contingent. The city gives them approval for the special use.
No.
Follow up, go ahead.
I mean, I'd argue the offer wouldn't be as attractive, right? If you're the owner, I'm not going to make a contingent on you going through a 2.5, 3 month process to get a special use approved. I'm not going to keep it on the market that long.
Mayor?
Right, well, that comes into play. If he's got other offers, well, I could see, you know.
Yeah.
But if it's been on the market for 6 months or a year,
Well, then he lost it. So my argument, I'm not arguing against it, and I'm not necessarily arguing for it. And the merit, it almost creates an unfair advantage, and if we're okay with the special use, then give it to everybody on the block. If we're arguing that that's such a big thing, that that's the hurdle or the barrier to businesses coming into town, let's look at the uses on those buildings and add those in. That's all.
Alderman Artie Woods?
Yeah, I just want to clarify what you said earlier, though. So even if we approve this tonight, we can, in special circumstances, revert back to the old way where it is tied to the owner, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I need.
Okay. Continue, Director.
All right, I'm going to hop to the third item. So, the proposed, one of the proposed text amendments was adding some existing language in the code related to, the requirements for sidewalk installation to a second place in the code. There was no change to the existing regulations. However, there was some concern about the fee in lieu for sidewalks that we have been collecting over the last 5 years. And so the council has every ability tonight to, change that practice. We can eliminate that fee in lieu requirement. But before, we decided, I just wanted to give you a few sentences of background. So, before I got here, probably I think it was about 5 years ago, the city council had directed staff to focus on the installation of sidewalks in the city. So in response, the staff was being super diligent about making sure that everybody was reminded that if the code triggers a requirement to install a sidewalk, that it was actually installed. Now, for sidewalks, the Public Works Director does have the ability to waive the installation of sidewalks where it's not practical or doesn't make any sense. So the requirement existed in the code, and the Public Works Director over the last 5 years agreed with property owners who said it really makes no sense for me to install a sidewalk here. Since the City Council had said, hey, sidewalks are important, we want you to focus on them. Similar to fee in lieu for trees, staff have been collecting a sidewalk fee in lieu at the amount of the estimate from a contractor that was submitted. It was collected and it was placed in a fund and then used for sidewalks that were constructed elsewhere in the city. It furthered that objective. And so now, if the council is concerned about that, action, we can just change that. All we need is direction from the city council tonight. If you're interested in discontinuing that practice, please let us know and we can stop.
Alderman Sosmowski?
Yeah, there was one resident that did come to me that said they're building, and you probably know who they are, they were building and they were asked to put a sidewalk in. But there's no sidewalk on either side of their property, anywhere in the whole subdivision. So they're wondering why do they have to put a sidewalk in and no one else?
So new construction does trigger, new construction is, a huge investment. That, in some cases, the code says that requires the installation of a sidewalk. If, in that instance, though, the Public Works Director has been making the decision to waive it. We had been collecting a fee in lieu. If you would like us no longer to do that, we're happy not to do it.
I mean, I get it, but if I was a homeowner, I'd be a little upset too, if there's a sidewalk in nowhere, and now I get to shovel that. I get to shovel it, I get to maintain it, but it goes to grass patch on one side and grass patch. Maybe, like you said, you take in some money for a future endeavor when you make everyone else put them in, or you go through and make everyone put them in. But that homeowner shouldn't be held responsible for a sidewalk that goes nowhere.
Alderman Messina?
I think I might have gotten that same call that Alderman Sizmarsky got, and then I also got another call as well. And I think it's particularly concerning on corner lots. So if it's okay with the chairman, Mrs. DeVito is here today, she has a lot that she's, if you're not opposed to speaking, I know your dad's not, but either one, right, where it's a corner lot, and in front, they've achieved that. They put the sidewalk in, fine, met the bill. The other side of the corner leads to a lift station, no man's land, literally nowhere, right? The mayor's been out there too. It's like, but in this case, we didn't have a way to waive that.
That's the one I was, okay.
Okay,
This is the same.
They covered their bases.
Yep.
Good. So I don't know if you guys wanted to add any more to that, or if we covered it, pretty much.
Goes
Oh,
nowhere.
go to the,
You'd have to
you can
go
go
to
to
the-
that side.
Yeah, it goes nowhere.
The official.
We won't post it on Facebook.
You need to state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Address of the new home that's being
Sure.
built? Sure. Alexandra DeVito, I go by Ally. It is 387 Preserve Lane. So yes, to Mr. Messina and Samarski, it is a sidewalk. We've achieved the front sidewalk along with our neighbors across the street. They do not have one that leads on the side of their corner lot, and so we feel that we didn't need to do that either. In addition to that, there is a large lift station along with huge vaults. There are two or three vaults, and so it wouldn't achieve anything other than putting either, I don't know, somebody on their bike going into the lift station or having to go back into the street, which could cause just more, I don't know, hazardous. So it leads into nothing. So that was the exemption I was asking for. Thank you.
Thanks.
So the Public Works Director, you still have the option to, based on,
Yeah, this is one of those instances where we felt it didn't quite make sense for them to install the sidewalk along Janus there, so we had opted for the fee in lieu, which we had done the past few years.
that's fine, okay.
But again, if you'd like us to stop doing that, we can do that.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
Yeah, so to kind of follow up on that, right, to your point as well, it's like, we're gonna collect for what purpose, right? We know that there is no way, no how, there will ever be a sidewalk put there, because it leads to nowhere, right? So maybe if there is a collection, maybe it's all right, we've gotten to a certain point, everybody on that block, kind of like an HOA. Something broke, we need to fix it, we're doing a special assessment. That approach, maybe, but it's unfortunate for a homeowner that's trying to just get in the community and build. I'll say her parents have been residents for like 40 years, that she's got this extra burden, and like even the fee in lieu of which I think we were all confused on. You'd think it would be a percentage. It was basically the same amount of money to keep in like an escrow, a city escrow for who knows, 15, 20, 30 years. It was the same amount. She might as well have just done the sidewalk. It was like $6,000 to put an escrow, and we keep into perpetuity. And if we do it, great. If not, maybe you'll live long enough to get your money back. Like, we don't have a process. Like, where she could be like, hey, it's been 30 years I've been living here. God willing, you stay 30 years. Where's my money? You never put a sidewalk. So the process is kind of broke in this scenario. is my opinion.
But my concern also is safety. So in a situation that we need a sidewalk there because of safety concerns, we're still going to be seeing that as far as,
So a sidewalk that goes nowhere, I mean, it's not
Right.
really convenient for anybody. It doesn't fit with any ADA compliance regulations. So that's why we have made this practice of collecting the escrow to use that money elsewhere in the neighborhood to improve the walkability, like we just did on Spruce Road by closing that path.
Okay.
There was a section of sidewalk missing, and we have some funds available to install sidewalk there proactively.
Alderman Woods, you had a question?
Yeah, so going back to that code, does the code read that you have to put the sidewalk in front of the house?
It currently says that all public and private sidewalks on and immediately adjacent to the lot shall be completed. So it's a code requirement, and like we said, the Public Works Director has been using good judgment to determine doesn't make sense there, and then collecting the fee in lieu, which we can stop doing.
So if I can follow up on that, so let's say the lift station and all these other encumbrances weren't there, they would have to then, whatever the depth of their lot is, I'm assuming that's on the side of their house, 150, 200 feet, have to put that sidewalk in also?
Correct. On quarter lots, they do have double the obligation because they have two frontages.
Mayor?
So this is that subdivision, it's got two cul-de-sacs on both sides, right? So this corner house goes right into the lift station, we got I think it's two huge vaults right there, we go right into the vault. On the other side, when they built the house, that goes into the fence, and it's a little tiny piece, but there's nothing there and then it goes into the other cul-de-sac and where they got the pond. And then we also have the one where the guy owned the house on
Creek, right?
Deer Path, and he bought the lot in there, and then he came here, he wanted to put a 6-foot fence all the way around, but there's no sidewalk in front of that fence. Everybody else that's putting up the house will have a sidewalk, but the two corners where that street basically ends, there's nothing there. One goes into a fence, the other one goes into the thing. It's kind of ridiculous.
Just to be,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Alderman Messina? Yes.
So, yeah, just to be clear, like, you're still gonna put a sidewalk in the front of your house, which they've done.
Yeah.
We're just talking about
Right.
the around the side, right? To no man's land on either side. So, just to be clear for everybody.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, just to follow up, because when that subdivision occurred, right, there were certain issues, and we had to step in, and one of my arguments was to put the sidewalks, to have the city put the sidewalk in, so that when somebody builds a house, they could actually walk around the block and not be the only guy with 35 feet of sidewalk, or 40 feet, whatever the lot frontage was, on the block waiting for everybody else to come in and clean up the weeds. It was unsightly, and that only hinders the development because nobody's taking care of it, really, right? You got all these lots full of, now it's better because there's a
I
lot
think
more
there's
houses
only
being
one
built,
lot
but-
left.
Two more lots, technically.
Yeah, so
One for sale.
I'm okay not forcing them to run a sidewalk to nowhere.
Right.
For sure. And also, I'm not in favor, if we're not gonna build sidewalks ever, why am I collecting the money from them? And it is different from the tree, because the tree is only counts if I cut down a tree that's already there. That's like saying, if there's a sidewalk there, you have to replace it. That makes sense. If you cut down a tree, you have to replace it. But in this case, the sidewalk's either not there because it's really underdeveloped, or it's not there because it's developed and nobody wanted sidewalks and didn't want to put them in, i.e. Woodside and areas in Ward 1, and some areas in Ward 4.
So the intent is in fee and lieu programs that, like for trees, we collect the money and we use it to plant trees elsewhere. For sidewalk fee and lieu, we collect the money and we would use it for sidewalks elsewhere in the community.
But in the case of the tree, we cut down a tree. We're replacing an actual tree. So if we're replacing sidewalks, then I'm okay. That makes sense. That's a direct parallel.
There's no
Right,
sidewalk.
either way.
But there's no sidewalk there.
Yeah.
No.
So do you?
and never gonna be a sidewalk. That's like saying I'm charging for the tree, but there's no tree on the lot. But you cut down the tree, but no, there's no tree on the lot, but I'm gonna charge it. That doesn't make sense to me. That's not a fair comparative.
Does she need a motion?
I do. I need direction on whether we should continue to collect a fee in lieu, or when the Public Works, so the requirement would still exist to install the sidewalk per the code. The Public Works Director, if some, would continue to evaluate whether it was appropriate to go in. If it's not appropriate to go in, he would waive it. And so the question for the council, or the PZB committee, is, would you like us to collect the fee in lieu, continue to do it, or no longer collect the fee in lieu?
Alderman Messina?
I'll make the motion. I think it's pretty well stated in the packet. I'll make a motion that, maybe it's not well stated, be waived for properties where it cannot be installed and will likely never be installed in the future due to the character of the neighborhood as determined by the Public Works Director.
I'll second that.
And what about the fee?
That fee would be waived. That was part of what I
Correct.
said. Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Alderwoman Ames, did you have anything to say?
I think you kind of answered. I was going to ask about the areas where there will never be a sidewalk if somebody builds. And I think there was a statement in there too about either new construction or if you changed a percentage of, like you expanded the house or something by a certain percentage, that would trigger that sidewalk
So-
issue as well.
Based on the concern from the PZB committee last time, we've eliminated that requirement. So it's really just new construction.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Mayor?
So this motion, or this just for this, or we're gonna, all the other changes?
So right
Or are we
now, I
doing
think
two
you're giving us a recommendation or some direction on whether or not to continue to collect the fee in lieu. And then we would need another motion on whether you'd like to recommend these three text amendments.
Okay, I
as
just want to make sure
proposed.
we're making the right, got it. Okay, this is just for the, in fee in lieu of.
So this is to waive the fee in lieu of.
Right.
In these scenarios where he deems is appropriate. Eliminate, yeah.
So we voted on that right now. You're doing a roll call on that? Yeah.
Alderman Art Woods,
Yes.
Alderman Currielli,
Yes.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski,
Yes.
Alderman Ames.
Yes.
Alderman Artie Woods.
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, continue,
then-
Director.
To remind you what the second recommendation is whether you're okay with the three changes that we're bringing forward this evening and all the other changes that were discussed at the last meeting. The first one was we no longer will require one-to-one replacement for nuisance and prohibited trees. Special uses will roam the land, but we can still continue to evaluate special uses on a case-by-case basis. And the existing language requiring sidewalks will be duplicated elsewhere in the code, but we will no longer collect fee in lieu.
Okay. Mayor?
Going back to the trees, so, okay, that makes sense, the junk trees. But what about the good ones? Some lots, there was some discussion, I thought, last time, about, on how to replace. Did we resolve that? Because there was a lot of, a good tree, if it's a 2-inch tree or 8-inch tree, you needed what, I forget how many,
6,
6 2-inch trees, or?
3-inch. So,
So that's not resolved, right? I'm just,
no, so
That's why-
that
okay.
isn't being changed here.
Okay.
That's a bigger project where we'd like to evaluate a lot of different tree preservation ordinances
Okay,
to see
okay.
what would be reasonable for communities like ours. And we'll
Got
bring
it.
that forward.
okay. Yeah, I knew we touched on it, but I didn't think we settled that one yet. Got it.
Continue?
So those were the changes, and we would like a recommendation or a motion to approve those changes, if you're okay with them.
Okay, so I'll make the motion for all the proposed changes. And roll call on that?
Do you have a second?
Yeah.
I second.
Got a second.
Alderman Art Woods,
Yes.
Alderman Currielli,
Yes.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski,
Yes.
Alderman Ames.
Yes.
Alderman Artiwood.
Yes.
And Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Director. Next is the items to consider at future meetings. We have Bryn Mawr remaining 7 homes, annexation, rezoning, revised re-subdivision, and vacation of street. That's coming up September 26th. And we also have the downtown park site plan request for proposal results, and that's coming up October the 10th. Do we have any other proposals items for the future, considered for future? If we have none, I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We adjourn, thank you.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Public Works Committee meeting. Let the note taker note that the same elected officials are here. Can I have a motion for approval of the meeting minutes of August 8th, 2024?
I'll make the motion.
Get a second from Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. First for report and recommendation, modifications to the existing skunk removal grant program. Alan, Director Lang.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's talk some skunks. So back in 2018, the City Council approved a program, a cost-share program with residents to have a company install skunk traps on their property. The resident paid just an initial voucher of $25 at the time. The program was $65 to the city and then $65 for any return visit. Since that time, the cost of the program to the city have doubled. It's now $130 for the initial visit, $81 for each subsequent return visit to free any animals from the traps. Also, there was never any time limit set on how long we would keep traps at any property. So a trap goes to a property, and if once a week they catch a skunk or a raccoon or a possum, the contractor comes out to empty the trap, and the city gets charged for it, and the resident does not contribute at all. So we're looking to amend the program now to increase the initial cost share for the resident and to set a time limit for the duration that the traps will remain in any resident, kind of in line with our rat mitigation program.
Alderman Sismarski.
Do we have a number on how many skunks have been caught versus year after year?
I don't have that much information. I can tell you probably more often than not, it's not a skunk in the
Right.
traps than it is.
So, I mean, it would be nice to have those numbers to see if the skunk population is decreasing and we're just crushing nuisance rodents and put that money towards the rat mitigation.
I can ask the contractor if they have
Please.
records of that.
It's a waste of time if we're catching possums and raccoons and everything else that live here. I mean,
Mayor, please.
So when you say a time limit, what are we talking about? 2 weeks? Because I know when they come out, they set the trap for 2 weeks. But so I could tell you, we had problems after this program started, right? I got my neighbors, hey, listen, city's got a program. Oh, yeah, well, and then nobody wanted to do anything. And I'm like, and they were coming through. I saw families of 4 and 5 coming through. So I'm like, okay, I told my wife, we'll just,
It's a nice area over there.
yeah, it's a lot of nice trees.
Happy the Pew.
I think we caught like 5 at that time, right? And they kept, but then all of a sudden we've seen foxes go, because we got the cameras. Now we've got, I see them every night, raccoons, possums, and all of a sudden, for the first time in probably 2 years, we saw a skunk. I'm sure the raccoons will take care of that guy because, we don't need it. But at that time, you had to show them, okay, we're coming out of here. They came out, and the first time they go, no, we don't see any evidence. Okay, fine. And they left, right? But then we were watching, right? So we saw where they were really coming from, and then, okay, yeah, now we'll set the trap. So do they no longer do that? They just, somebody makes a call and they come out and put a trap regardless, or?
They'll still
They
do an
used to
initial
evaluation, right?
investigation of the site. Just like the rat mitigation program, you don't want to set bait if there's not a problem, because then you'll just attract animals to the property. So they still come out, and the other mitigation measures are just as important as setting the traps, making sure that there's not food left out for other animals,
all enclosures under your deck and such are closed up, don't give them a place to burrow, so they still do that initial site investigation. And as for the duration, 2 weeks sounds like a reasonable time frame, or setting a limit on the number of return visits, because in 2 weeks, you could have an animal in there every night, every other night, and the city is paying for each of those subsequent return visits.
Follow up?
Yeah, so, but if, this is for skunks, if they've caught a raccoon or a possum, well, you didn't catch any skunks, we're still gonna put the trap there just because they caught the other animals? I'm just curious. Or, hey, there's no skunks here, we're done, because I know what it costs to get the trap for the raccoon, right? My son had the problem where he lives. And basically, you know, there is no program, but he had to pay for it. Everybody's, you know, oh, throw some food out there with some antifreeze. I told my son, I go, don't be doing that stuff. You start seeing dead animals all over the place. Somebody's going to call the police and you'll be in big trouble.
If the program's specifically geared towards skunks, obviously, so if there's no skunk activity, if the traps aren't catching skunks, there's no reason to keep the trap in place.
Well, but I think I heard there was a complaint from one of the staff members said, somebody keeps calling and we keep going out there and we keep paying and keep paying and keep paying. So do we need a motion to what, cap it or what? What are we actually looking for? So and you said raise the cost, so are we going to $35? Do you get staff have a recommendation? I'm just curious.
The recommendation in the memo was to keep it as a 50-50 split with the resident. So between the initial visit and one return visit, the price is $210. So we proposed splitting that 50-50 with the resident, but the council can make any motion that they
Oh, that's a
see
little
fit.
stiff now.
Alderwoman Ames?
Yeah, I guess with that too, so right now, they're just paying $25, but then if, for the proposal, they would get they would have to pay 110, and then the city would pay 110. So they're only paying 25 flat, and then if a skunk is caught, then they pay to have that removed also?
Currently,
I guess I'm just-
you're
yeah.
asking? No,
Right.
currently they just pay $25 and the city bears the rest of the cost.
And if that trap's been out in their yard for a year, every time something's caught, the city's paying for that. And I as a resident, just paid $25 to have it come out.
Correct.
To have it placed. And I think I also read, is it if they put a trap or if I have my own trap, I can put that there too, and it's the $25?
They can purchase subsequent traps through the contractor for an additional fee, $67 under this new program. I'm not sure what it was under the old program. And I'm not, I think I do recall something about if they purchase their own traps, the contractor will come out and empty those traps as well for a return visit fee, I would imagine.
Follow up?
How many participants do we have in the skunk program currently?
Currently, there are none. We suspended the program temporarily while we were modifying it. Public Works is taking over from the police department, and we're looking to change some of the program guidelines. So we have not given out any new traps, so currently there are no traps out there.
So prior to that, what was were there a lot of people participating in this?
I'm not quite sure. Deputy Chief might have more information on that.
So you have to guess about 5 to 10 without looking at the paperwork.
Oh, okay, so,
Alderman Messina?
Yeah, a couple questions, comments. I had heard it was close, I think it was like 8. So what I had heard, what is the actual budget that we have for this program?
In the past, I think it was $5,000,
I thought-
but I'm not 100% sure on it, sir.
Go ahead.
I think it's 7.
So follow-up. I mean, I personally think this is like a frontline program for like the residents. This makes an impact, like out of their pocket, to your point, your son just bought a house, right? Like, that hurts when you gotta pay $400 out of your pocket, and this is where they come and say, wow, the city's doing something, and sadly, people feel more value out of things like this than some of the bigger things we do, like a sidewalk or a new street, for whatever crazy reason. So, I guess I absolutely agree, we need to cap it, but I just know some of the calls I would get is that, could we at least, if we're gonna cap it, fine, but could we at least like cap it where, let's say you come to my house and you catch a possum, just happenstance, but like, at least give me another opportunity, because I have a feeling we will all get more, we'll probably get a lot of calls that are like, this is BS, like, the skunk is out here, but it just happened to catch a possum. That's comment 1, and if I could
Go ahead.
have a follow-up. I know in my case, like, there's kind of an open field across the street, and like, is there a way to do these where it's in a territory or in an area? Like, because it's one thing, I mean, I paid to have that by my house, didn't catch anything, but I see this damn skunk everywhere, and it's like a matter of time where he's gonna skunk my dog. So like, is there a way where, do they have another way we can do this, where we can just station it in a certain area?
Director Lee?
Yeah, we could look at placing proactive traps, like we do the rat program along public spaces. We'd have to speak to the contractor about that and identify some trouble areas. That's certainly a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Artwoods?
I just have one question. Alan, how did you get the police department to relinquish the skunk duties? I'm shocked.
One of the companies is Critter Detectives in
Dirty
the report, if
job.
you read it, I mean,
We're becoming the pest management company within the city. We got rats, coyotes, all kinds of fun. So.
Mayor Police, did you have another?
Oh, my.
Yeah, no, regarding the traps, basically when you come out, you tell them where they're coming from. That's where they do their evaluations, investigations. Like at my son's house, they were coming up the stairs, going on his railing, jumping right on the roof. They broke in. We had to fix that, you know. But first we had to catch them before we fixed the hole. We caught 3 of them. So, and believe me, it wasn't $50. But we're going from 25, you want to go to, what'd you say, 100?
105 was the 50/50 model, as we did with some other
Yeah,
programs.
I think that's a little stiff. I mean,
Out of 8 homes, out of how
Anyone
many
have a
homes
motion?
in Wooddale?
Alderman Artwoods?
Why don't we make it $50?
that's what I was thinking, at least $50.
Then raise the budget, I don't know,
Well,
from
we-
5,000 to 7,500.
But I think we're still good, because I don't think we're using the budget.
Director
Yeah.
Lee?
If we're not putting any traps out, we're not using the budget,
We're
of
using the
course.
budget for 8 homes.
Director Lee?
I think, yeah, just like we've done with some other programs, if we get close to our budget, we'll come back to the council at that time and ask for an
Yeah,
increase. So $50 sounds
Well, we
like-
need a motion.
I was gonna say, make a motion.
Okay,
And then, do we
Okay.
want to establish a duration, like the mayor's suggestion, maybe 2 weeks? And then if we don't see any activity, obviously there's
Well-
extenuating circumstances. If we're catching a skunk every day, we can prolong the program.
so,
Mayor Police?
so basically, they set the trap, they said they come back in 2 weeks, but here it says like 5 days. I mean, what are these guys telling you? Because now, if you catch one, boom, you gotta call them within 24 hours, and they come right out, and that's another fee. So,
So the residents are encouraged to check the traps daily.
Of course.
And if they catch anything, then they call the contractor back out. But the contractor will come out within 2 weeks if they've not gotten called to check and make sure the trap's still baited and such.
so if after 2 weeks they've caught nothing, we're done? Is that what we're saying?
We want to see 2 visits.
Or are we gonna set the trap one more time and let another 2 weeks go by and we're done? I don't
The
know.
council
That's
prefers.
what you're looking for, right? Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Alderman Artwoods?
Yeah, when we say done, we're done with the program, or just
No,
done
no.
with that one
With that
resident?
address, right. So,
For what period of
I don't have
time?
any issue, because I had all the foxes, I think they ate all the skunks.
Right.
But over by, they moved on, I don't know where they moved to. I would have sent them by your house if I knew it was a problem.
no, we had the fox, but now he's gone.
I had the whole family, I had 3 of them living in my backyard. But to Alderman Messina's point, can there be a broader, maybe an area thing? I don't know, you know, his area is different than my area, it's different than Ward 4, so they're all a little different, how you would
We eat them in
attack
the
these, is
for.
there a better way to do it? Because I'm sure they are cases where you call them out and you catch something else other than the skunk, because they've gotten a little smarter.
We eat them in Ward 4.
Nice.
Cats.
Alderwoman Ames?
I think the 2-week period, like if I had something in my yard, I think if you've got that trap out there for, you know, even the first couple of nights, if they're not used to having food available, they're gonna go in the trap, and 2 weeks is a good amount of time to at least gauge if you're catching anything with that, and then just take it from there. If there's a lot of activity, then maybe your discretion is to extend it. I guess each situation is gonna be a little bit different, you know, depending on the activity of the trap. So I definitely think there should be a end point of not leaving a trap out there for a year, you know, and just continually paying every time something's caught.
So, I'm just curious, what is staff recommending?
I think if you don't see any activity within 2 weeks, I think it's a pretty good indication that you don't have
And-
an issue.
And follow up. So, you took the trap away, you didn't catch anything. Week later, I call you back, you coming back out again, or are we done at that address? I'm just,
Director Lang?
Or can we pay another $50?
oh, right, they would have to pay another $50, I guess.
Right, I don't think there's any limit on number of
Okay,
times you
no, I'm just,
participate.
because I mean, I can show you my Ring cameras every night. Same two raccoons, the possum, and and all of a sudden now a skunk, but
I
I'm
think
sure,
they're just pets at this point.
I'm sure the raccoons are gonna get a hold of the skunks shortly.
Alderman Messina?
Got a question on what you've seen, well, maybe it's a question for Deputy Chief. Would we run into the opposite problem where if it's a nuisance property, then inherently, like, maybe not skunks, but possums might come because it's a source of food? Have we had those issues where it's like a property that kept calling over and over, but it's like the root of the problem is your house is a pigsty and it's a source of food? Like, have you guys had those? Do you think that might become a problem?
I haven't heard that issue with possums or skunks necessarily, but we have had that with rat complaints, and we've been able to proactively place some stations on nuisance properties.
Okay. Topic for another day on that one.
Okay.
Do we cut that off at some point?
You want to repeat the motion and can take a vote?
I think it's $50, right?
$50. 2 weeks, $50.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Alderman Arpwood,
Yes.
Alderman Currielli,
Yes.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski,
Yes.
Alderman Ames,
Yes.
Alderman Artiwood,
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
And that passes. Next item is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Wooddale and H.R. Green for Phase 2 engineering services for the Elizabeth Drive Bridge Replacement Program. Director Lang.
Thank you, Chairman. We've been awaiting design approval of our Phase 1 report from IDOT for over a year now. We've finally gotten it, so we have authorization to proceed with Phase 2, which is the actual design work. And this is that agreement for the construction design and development of the construction documents, as well as right-of-way acquisition and negotiation.
Any questions or comments? Alderwoman Ames?
So just to clarify, since we're getting the project funded with the STP bridge funds, so 80% of the cost of this phase is covered with that
Correct.
reimbursement? Okay, thank you.
Alderman Catalano?
When are they actually going to put shovels in the ground on that? Isn't it?
So we're planning 18 months for Phase 2 design and right-of-way acquisition, which puts us in early 2026 for a letting and then construction that spring.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Do you have a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Arpwood,
Yes.
Alderman Currielli,
Yes.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski,
Yes.
Alderman Ames,
Yes.
Alderman Artiwood,
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
And finally, approval of an agreement between the City of Wooddale and Canadian Pacific Kansas City Limited, otherwise known as CPKC, for installation and funding of a predictive mobility system and ITS interconnect for advanced warning signs.
Second.
That was not a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Director Lang.
Thank you. So this arose out of the efforts of the Stop the CPKC Merger Coalition. Part of the Surface Transportation Board's ruling was that they had to provide some mitigation measures for the impact of the longer, more frequent trains. So they've agreed to hire this company, Linkthings, to install some train sensors, which will monitor the train activity and be able to provide notification to first responders, such as police and fire, of when the tracks will be down, the guards will be down, and for how long, so they can make appropriate decisions in their emergency responses. There's also going to be advanced warning signs for drivers. The details of that are going to be forthcoming in a future agreement, most likely, whereas they will be placed somewhere north or south of the tracks and east of west on Irving, and it would notify the drivers that the gates are down There's also the possibility that there'll be an app that people can download that'll show you exactly where trains are at and when the crossings will be down, so you can make decisions on your commute.
Were you able to see for the resident-facing version, is it going to show like a schedule for the entire day, or is this more of a, something within the next hour or half an hour is happening?
I have not seen any type of prototype for the app.
Okay.
I've only been told about it.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Is this a roll call or all in favor? Are we spending money on this? Is this funded
There
by?
is no cost to the city. This is fully funded by CPKC.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. Next, items to be considered at future meetings. The Addison Road water main is in September. Anything anyone else needs to add? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.